Do you have any relationship with trees? Have you ever done anything for them? Trees, the environment, animals, and nature have been with us for as long as the world exists for a reason. Cars, houses, shoes come and go, but trees and nature as a whole are there for us, and ideally, so it should remain for infinity. We need them more than they need us. Firstly, because trees and rainforests produce the oxygen that we breathe. They absorb CO2 from the air while releasing oxygen into the atmosphere. This is why it is important not only to have cities full of trees, but also to have parks in them, precisely to mitigate the pollution generated by urban lifestyle. Secondly, trees and animals are our primary source of food, and in order for them to grow healthy and in turn keep us healthy, they need to be nurtured and grown in their natural environment and habitat, not in labs or the like. Thirdly, trees protect the soil from erosion in case of rainfall and natural disasters. What is erosion? It's the destruction of soil nutrients through which the soil becomes weak for production. Fourthly, trees function as windbreaks, and they also break the flow of water, which can be extremely protective of our lives and assets in times of floods, tsunamis, and other natural disasters. Fifthly, trees function as shades. They protect us and our children in schools from the sun. Sixthly, trees offer firewood and are used to build homes in rural areas. This is why they are not unlimited resources, and therefore they need to be protected. Protection from all levels of control and influence. In terms of protection, every country does it differently. Many African countries struggle to have it under control, mainly due to corruption that leads governments to allow uncontrolled logging and deforestation. Kenya has developed an arsenal of environmental and conservation measures and institutions dating from the early years of their independence. Kenya's trajectory towards being one of the best examples, if not the best, of environmental protectionism in Africa is worth noting. Relying on land for food and breeding animals was part of Kenyan culture before the British arrived. Kenyans had vast lands and forests from which they were able to sustain themselves. When the Mau Mau insurged, they would hide in the bushes and forests, which was tricky for the British, and so they decided to destroy forests so they could easily capture the Mau Mau soldiers. In 1977, a woman named Wangari Maathai formed an environmental movement called the Green Belt Movement after realizing that the fast-paced deforestation happening in Kenya was worsening hunger in the country as well. She, as a biologist and environmentalist, came up with the idea of building trees all over Kenya, primarily to help alleviate hunger. She knew that that was a mission that women in particular would perform better, as they were the ones most connected to the land. As a child of farmers, Maathai herself would see not only her mother, but many women in her village working the land to provide for their families. So she knew firsthand that women were the best demographic group to engage in her very ambitious plan. It was very ambitious in that the plan would go against what the government was implementing, logging, and the affront would be conducted by women, which was unheard of in such a patriarchal and sexist society. Maathai was the first East African woman to earn a PhD. When she established the Green Belt movement, she was a professor at the University of Nairobi. No other Kenyan environmentalist had ever physically clashed with government after government like Wangari Maathai did during President Daniel Moi's mandate. She was beaten up many times, jailed a few, but even after she almost died, as a result of those beatings during a protest at Uhuru Park in Nairobi, did she stop her fight against establishment back then. At Uhuru Park, she not only successfully fought to discourage the building of a 62-story skyscraper, but also, together with the mothers of political prisoners, she resisted for 11 months in the park until the skyscraper project was dropped and the prisoners were released. It is worth mentioning that during the most severe beatings at the Uhuru Park, Maathai was left unconscious and spent a few days in coma. When she regained consciousness, all she would talk about was the desire and determination of going back to where she nearly died and carry on with the fight. Maathai believed that one could not protect the environment unless one empowered the people about the environment. And so she went on giving seminars to thousands and thousands of people about civil and environmental rights so that Kenyans could protect their interests. With the knowledge on how to plant different trees, not only for their own subsistence, but also to protect the soil from erosion and the environment as a whole, Kenyans were able to transform their country with conviction and pass that conviction on to the next generations. After President Moi could no longer be re-elected, Wangari Maathai became an MP with 98% of the votes, and then went on to become Assistant Minister for Environment, Natural Resources and Wildlife from 2003 to 2005, and among many accolades, Wangari Maathai was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2004, becoming the first environmentalist to win such prize. Today, students across Kenya learn how to plant trees as part of educational programs to fight climate change, and that is, without a doubt, one of Maathai's legacy. And it is very common in Kenya for organizations of all sorts and schools to set up a number of trees to plant as a goal. Students are individually attributed trees for them to take care of and are encouraged to nurture them as they would do with their pets. And that goes alongside trainings and education on how to plant trees and why trees are important, of course. If trees won't mature, students feel directly responsible for the failure. This develops in them the love for environment. And if you feel proprietorship towards a tree, you will most likely fight to protect it. Late 2023, Kenyans were given a special holiday to plant 100 million trees as part of the government's goal to plant 15 billion trees in 10 years. Each Kenyan is being encouraged to plant at least 2 seedlings, aiming at the 100 million target. The government is making available 150 million seedlings in public nurseries. It is providing the seedlings for free for Kenyans to plant in designated public areas. The government also launched an app called Jaza Miti, Swahili for Fill with Trees, where users can document their planting activity and find real-time updates on nationwide tree planting efforts. The app also helps users select the tree species suited to their location. According to a November 2023 government report, data on the app will be verified every 4 months each year, and the awards and certificates of green conduct will be given to outstanding tree planters. Community members chanted environmental justice slogans as they planted trees at the Mathara Green Park. All these engagements and efforts are a conservation of Kenya's environmental culture. What distances them from these practices is a result of modernity or urban lifestyle, which affects us all. It deprives us from what's natural and healthy, giving us the impression that we are developing. Africa, do it like Kenya or better. It's not about criticizing our citizens' behavior without indoctrination. It's not enough to have protective laws. There has to be indoctrination and practice. And this should be the formula for everything we want to seriously implement and achieve. Kenya, asante sana. Wangari Maathai, asante sana. Thank you, and see you next time, guys. Please subscribe and like. Bye.